100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
And good afternoon, 2:04 the time. Glad you're along. We're in the court of public opinion. Your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. And of course, we're going to begin taking your calls immediately. But I made an executive decision based on, and I haven't even talked to you about this, David, or you, Randy.
Okay, go ahead and tell us.
I haven't even talked about it, but based on a call I got yesterday. And, I thought about this guy a lot. The black guy that called up that felt that, the police officers were...
Yeah, he was the one that was upset about the police. He still lived in 1960s, 70s time frame.
I mean, that mind frame, he's obviously wrong, factually wrong. You can pick, a story here or a story in New York or Los Angeles or Detroit or wherever it happens to be about what a cop did. And then, of course, you wait for the evidence to decide whether, in fact, it was a bad move or a good move. And people have said, well, Rick, you shouldn't talk about this. You're biased because you have family in law enforcement. I do. But I don't, maybe I am biased because I see it from both sides. I see my cousins, my uncles, even my son-in-law, as he goes to work and, takes the dog with him. He's a canine officer. And of course, if you're a canine officer, the dog goes home with you. The city puts a little kennel in your backyard. I see both sides of that. I see him going to work with the dog. It's a dual apprehension dog and dope dog. Does a lot of work, good work, carjackings and things of that nature. The dog has been written up. And he's a good kid. Well, I call him a kid. He's not a kid. He's in his late 20s, early 30s. But I also see him when he gets home and gets down on the floor with his two daughters and the family dog, the other German Shepherd, and how he treats my daughter. I mean, the thought that, white cops are out doing bad things on purpose, no, it's not factually true. Are there bad cops? Sure. Human beings are fallible. They're going to make mistakes. But generally speaking, the person that dislikes a bad cop more than you do or I do is another cop because it indicts them all. But you can pick and choose. Well, let me look all over the United States and find the one negative story about a cop, and I'll camp on that. That's what some people do, and I realize that. Where do you go to get a good story about a cop? What a cop does about his job or her job? I don't know of any place that does that. Do you?
No one ever. If you're doing something right, that's the last thing they want to report.
Yeah, I mean the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads, has never been more true, especially when it comes to police officers and sheriffs and law enforcement in general after 8 years of a president trying to throw them under the bus for everything. So, starting today, a good news story about cops just doing their job. Just doing what they get paid to do. They got up in the morning, maybe had a bowl of Cheerios or a piece of toast, kissed the wife and the kids goodbye, got in their car and went to work.
Well, we've had a couple of those in the last week, Rick. Remember the guy who found the $20 to police officer? He gave it to the guy because he can't accept money. So there's one from a week ago.
I've got one today to kick this thing off with. And if you've got a good law enforcement story about cops and they won't do that themselves because they don't look at themselves as heroes or any of that kind of stuff. They're just doing what they're getting paid to do. But not everyone is wired to do what law enforcement does. And if they try to get into it, they find out pretty quick that they're not wired up for it. So I thought I would give you today's good news cop story. And if you have suggestions, you can email to me, Rick Roberts Show, 2 S's, Rick Roberts, and then another S, show, at WBAP.com. Now, granted, I'm going to verify the story, so you can't just make things up and send it to me. I have to cite your source so I can vet it, make sure it's true, and I will be selecting those every day. We'll spend the first couple of minutes talking about a good news cop story. All right? I mean, God knows we got enough people out there with their nose out of joint. Well, a cop did this and a cop did that. Look, you can do that all day long. But how many people talk about the good things they do? Well, we're going to start doing that the first couple of minutes of every show. And again, if you have a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, whatever, that you want to include, just email me, Rick Roberts Show at WBAP.com altogether. All right. Today's story comes out of Michigan. A police officer risked his life to pull a teenager from a car that burst into flames early Sunday after the driver crashed into the woods. It was a pretty dramatic incident, and it was captured on a dash cam video in the police officer's car. It was Oakland County. Sheriff's officer said the crash happened around 2:30 in the morning. The driver flew past the deputy at speeds exceeding 100 miles an hour. The deputy tried to chase the driver, but couldn't catch up. Now think about this. Here's a deputy. He's driving along. A car passes him doing over 100. What are you thinking? Did he just kill somebody? Did he just, break in someplace? Did he rape somebody? You don't know. All you know is that you're going to take chase and try to catch up. Well, he couldn't catch up. The driver had too much of a lead and too much speed, and the driver ended up crashing into a group of trees before the car then erupted into flames. Well, the dash cam video in the deputy's car, you can see the deputy running over to this ball of flame now, which was a car. He broke the sunroof of the car to pull the 18-year-old driver from the burning vehicle. It's just a reminder of the types of things deputies and police officers encounter each and every single day. The deputy had been in pursuit of this speeding suspect. It was his first instinct to risk his own life, running toward the danger instead of away from it, to save this individual in a burning vehicle. If not for his action and quickly, this individual may have not survived the incident. And, of course, the teenager, who was not identified, at least not yet, had an odor of alcohol and marijuana. When he was pulled from the vehicle, he was later taken to a hospital for treatment from a broken leg and some other lacerations from the crash. He's since been released from custody pending further investigation and blood toxicology reports and so on. So there you go. Another human being is alive because of a deputy doing his job. If somebody went past me doing 100 miles an hour and I took chase, and the guy ended up crashing in the woods and burst into flames, I have to ask myself, would you run over there and risk your life to help somebody that just, blasted past you at 100 miles an hour? I don't know whether I would or not. It's bad to say, but I don't know. Well, the cop saved his life, our sheriff's deputy, so good for him. All right. We appreciate the work, the service. If you have a story you want to submit to me, keeping in mind I will verify it, simply send it to Rick Roberts Show, 2 S's, Rick Roberts, and then show all together at WBAP.com. All right. So every day we're going to have a different story from all over the country. Everybody lined out. Didn't mean to spring this on you, but you're up to speed now.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Fully aware now. Thank you.
All right. Matthew in Weatherford. Matthew, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, Matthew?
I'm doing all right, sir. I just want to say, I served as a police officer for 14 years. I enjoyed the job, but I got tired of every time it was a racist situation, and I was being called racist, and it was just because we were called to the scene. It's not like we chose to show up. We got called there. And after the Dallas shooting, I went home. I talked to my wife. I got 3 kids, and I made the choice to make a career change. I said, you know what? If they don't want us that bad, then fine. Let them see a world without us.
Well, first of all, I thank you for your service. I do, and I understand. I've talked to my daughter many times. There was a situation where her husband was called out, man with a gun, and he got there first, no backup, and didn't have the dog at that time, and was told to wait for backup. So that's what he did. But then this guy runs right in front of his car with a gun in his hand. Well, he had to take chase, and my daughter was pretty upset. Why didn't he wait for backup? Why didn't he wait? And I said, Pumpkin, you know what you signed up for. You're into law. He's into law enforcement. Both of your dreams. So, I thank you, but I do understand why you made the career choice. I thank you for the service you gave. All right. So that's how that works. There is a story every day, and a good story, except you never hear about it. You only hear about the bad stuff. We're going to see if we can kind of change that a little bit. 2:14 the time. I'm Rick Roberts, News Talk 820 WBAP. All right.
Politician.
2:19 the time. My bad. Your calls, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Well, it was the State of the Union, and for the most part, conservatives said they liked what they saw. Democrats were sitting on their hands. They walked out. They ripped President Trump's call for unity. Nancy Pelosi, I don't know if she had a mouthful of Laffy Taffy she was trying to get out from between her teeth or what. She she applauded once or twice, I think. But why did she even show up? I don't get that. And Chucky Schumer, a rare view of Chuck Schumer without his glasses on. He did applaud, when they started talking about immigration. But I'll be honest with you. I don't even know why the Democrats showed up. They scowled, they booed. You couldn't hear most of that. They groaned, as Trump got to pillar 3 and pillar 4 of his immigration plan. Trump was talking about soaring job numbers. They just sat there, stone-faced. He honored veterans and pointed them out. Even one walked out after becoming triggered by a patriotic chant. It was ridiculous. USA, who was that? Gutierrez? Who was it that walked out?
You hit it on the head.
Yeah,
that's who it was.
Gutierrez. He just couldn't stand hearing, USA. Democrats, at President Trump's first State of the Union, after a year of, partisan bickering back and forth, they were in no mood to accept his call for bipartisanship. Fine. We know where they stand. This is on them. Whatever happens with the Democrats now is on them. Tonight, I call on all of us to set aside our differences, to seek out common ground, and to summon the unity we need to deliver for the people. This is really the key. These are the people we are elected to serve. What did I say the other day? What did the Founding Fathers set this up to work like? That both parties would work on our behalf. Now, they can have their individual differences, but at the end of the day, when the dust settled, you're supposed to be served. I'm supposed to be served. Democrats weren't having any of it. The call was met with one of more than 100 rounds of applause. I started counting just to see, that little trivia thing. I lost track. There was 100 rounds of applause, but from just one side of the aisle. Trump undeniably contributed to the division in Washington. There's no doubt about that. None. But that's what the American people wanted. They didn't want a politician, right? They said they were sick of politics as usual. That's why Trump was elected. The partisanship was just seething. And it was jarring, I think, for a lot of Democrats. I'm not sure what they're doing today. Probably went home, took a long hot shower, maybe a prescribed sedative, and tried to sleep it off. I'm not sure. Why are the Democrats not applauding job growth, higher wages, the drop in Latino and African American unemployment? Why are they not applauding that? And if you looked, there was one section of nothing but African American representatives. They didn't applaud anything. Even when, they came up with the numbers, the African American unemployment numbers are lower now than they ever have been. They just sat stone-faced. I don't care. I hate everything about this guy. Okay. Frank Luntz, you know who that guy is. He's a pollster. I like Frank Luntz. He doesn't know how to tie a tie, but I like Frank Luntz. He's a good guy. He asked in a tweet, hey, how come they're not applauding any of these things that work for everybody, no matter your political affiliation? I thought economic success is good for everyone, no matter Democrat, Republican, or apolitical. Economic success is good for you if you're a Democrat working, isn't it? But see, Democrats no longer view you as a barometer. It's all about what they're doing and can get done in Washington. Luis Gutierrez, and I've talked to this joker a few times, he walked out after chants of USA, USA, USA erupted in the House chamber of the Capitol building. After the speech, he said, he's from Illinois, by the way, he said, whoever translated it for him from Russian did a good job. Okay, Luis. I mean, honestly, if you don't like the country, why are you still here? Well, we're going to take your observations. What jumped out at you? I thought Trump did a good job, very good job. He was calm, he was measured, he was on point. And he didn't, have a whole line of people set up to, okay, here's this guy, he was denied a cake because he's homosexual. Here's another guy, he actually soiled himself because he couldn't use the girls' bathroom in his day school. I mean, he didn't do any of that. What he did was pretty substantive, I thought. Okay, we'll take your calls. The State of the Union, Trump's first State of the Union. We'll take your calls. We got a lot to get to as far as that goes, too. Your calls straight ahead. 1-800-288-9227, 1-800-288-WBAP. You are next.
They're watching tonight. Let me be absolutely clear. Ustedes son parte de nuestra historia. Vamos a luchar por ustedes y no nos vamos a alejar. You are part of our story. We will fight for you, and we will not walk away.
La Cuero Taco Bell. I'm sorry, man. I don't speak Spanish. That was Joe Kennedy III. The Democrats have a response to the State of the Union. They do that. They do that with every president. And Joe Kennedy III, I guess they got some gymnasium someplace. Somebody's car was parked right behind him. I didn't get any of that. But it was, it was obvious. I don't think the Democrats are going to come around at all. All right, let's get to your calls, your observations, your comments on the president's first State of the Union speech last night. Let's go to Monty in Grapevine. Monty, how you doing?
Very well, Rick. How about yourself?
Doing okay.
Great. Thanks for taking my call. I've got a few things to say. First of all, that speech was outstanding. And I think that this really shows the hypocrisy of the Democrats. Not only are they anti-Trump, they are now anti-American, it seems to me.
That's a very, very good observation because I had the same brief thought just for a moment. It's no longer about partisan politics. They act as though they don't like anything about this country.
It seemed so last night with all of them, the way they were smirking and crying, it seemed like.
When you're talking about expanded job growth and low unemployment numbers and, the fact that people are getting checks in the mail and the economy's booming, nobody on the Democrat side, it was like it offended them that someone other than a Democrat was making things work. Well,
Absolutely it did.
It didn't matter to me. It wouldn't matter to me if he was a Democrat, probably in some areas, but not in the area of the economy and infrastructure and military buildup. And man, I just couldn't get it. I thought, what, do they hate everything about America? Very good observation.
And I have one other thing to say, Rick, and thank you for your comments. I agree with you. Also, with these regards to Democrats saying without DACA, it's going to break up the nucleus of these families that are here illegal aliens. Well, what about their families they left in Mexico or Guatemala or whatever whole country? And they left their families there and broke up the nucleus. Now what do they want to do here?
Yeah, it's I've got to say this out loud. The government has shut down before. The government shut down and non-essential workers get furloughed and all this kind of thing. The Democrats have proven by their actions, they are willing to shut the government down. They're willing to destroy the country over what? Over a group of individuals that are not even U.S. citizens. Over people that aren't even supposed to be here. I'm telling you right now, this, if you want to look at it and watch it, as entertainment, this is what Democrats do when they build new voting blocks. All right? Just as they did, half a century ago with the black community, scaring the black community to death that if they voted for a Republican, they were going to end up back in shackles. Of course, that shifted. The black community could only be fooled for so long, and then they said, no, I'm not doing this anymore. You've been promising stuff for 50 years, and it hasn't worked. Well, this is what happens when one of the parties tries to build a new voting block. That's exactly what... Look, illegal immigrants, we're willing to shut our government down. We're willing to destroy this country just for you. Just for you. We're doing this for you. Well, Joe Kennedy, the third of the famous Kennedy clan, he's going to talk to you in Spanish. Uno, dos, tres, cuatro, whatever it is. This is what happens when you sell your soul to politics. And you're right. You're right. This isn't about Republicans anymore. This is about the very baseline of America. Aaron in Carrollton. Aaron, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm well. How are you, Rick?
Good.
It's a pleasure to talk to you. Something that stood out to me was when he was talking about immigration reform, he mentioned the 1.8 million and the amnesty.
Right.
But he said it would be a 12-year process.
Correct.
I thought, what was that going to look like? Are they going to go through the same pipeline that the people who are currently doing it legally would be doing, or?
Well, they would almost have to. You couldn't, the people that have stood in line and saved their money and sacrificed and, maybe split their families in order to try and come here legally instead of illegally, you couldn't pass them up. Everybody else that you're going to give citizenship to, as he said, has to be merit-based, has to be, what do you contribute to society? What are your skills? If you read the Mexican immigration law, it was like he lifted it right from Mexico's own immigration law. You don't get to go down there unless you've got money to support yourself and you can contribute in a positive way. It was a pretty smart thing on their part to bring that up.
Yeah, I found that very interesting. And I loved when he talked about, we as Americans can be dreamers too. I thought that was just an excellent jab.
Well, it was a jab, and it was a necessary jab, because right now the Democrats, they lost the election. They've lost Hillary to scandal after scandal. This memo that's about to be released is going to do further damage. They've lost the DNC chair. They've lost everything. The only thing they've got to hold on to become relevant once more are millions of people that are here that shouldn't be here voting for them. If you were to say, yeah, come on in, it's going to take a 12-year process. The reason Democrats don't like that is because you can't vote until you're a citizen, or unless, of course, you're in California.
And I actually found myself being okay with that after he laid out the 4 pillars, as long as, it would be great if they could also throttle down the current immigration to kind of absorb some of that. But I was okay with them going through the process.
Get rid of the visa lottery system. That's nuts. The chain migration system. Of course, you heard some of the groans from one side of the chamber, because that means that's 1 less vote or 2 less votes or a dozen less votes for a Democrat. You witnessed last night what happens when people sell their souls for a political vote, and it was all on one side of the house.
Yeah, I think your previous caller hit the nail on the head when he said the Democrats really showed who they truly are.
Yeah,
it's
they
getting
did.
outrageous.
They did. Very outrageous. Aaron, thank you for the call. I appreciate it. Ted in Plano. Ted, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Ted?
Hey, how's it going, Rick?
Good.
Talk to you again. I've been listening to you guys all day, out and about in the car, and I was very, very proud of Donald Trump last night with the way that he took up for America and our veterans. I tweeted our text last night on Facebook, and they have banned me from Facebook.
Well, you got to be careful on that social media, Ted. Yeah, I mean, he made it very, very clear. I mean, look, you may not like the man for his past activities. If we went into other people's past lives like JFK and Bill Clinton in Arkansas and all that, and if that were the news story of the day, in their day, it wasn't quite what it is today. You'd probably dislike them to some degree too. What I'm concerned, I'm not looking for a role model for my kids, all right? And I'm not looking for a spiritual advisor. My pastor can take care of that. I'm looking for a guy that can control people when they're used to spending money like it's water. I'm looking for a strong military. I'm looking for other countries to view us as a superpower, not, oh yeah, it's those Americans again. I'm looking to be the lead dog in the pack like we once were. And this guy's getting it done. You may not like his tactics. You may not like his personality. You may not like his background or the fact he's a billionaire or he's married to a former model. You may not like any of that. Forget that. How's he doing taking care of the country? How's he doing on employment? How's he doing on trade? How's he doing on the military? How's he doing on keeping our country from being overrun from every corner of the world? How's he doing on that? That's what a president does. If you're looking for a spiritual advisor, don't look to D.C., look someplace else. If you're looking for a role model for your kids, you need to go look in the mirror. If you're looking for somebody that is flawless, well, good luck. That's impossible. All right, more of your calls straight ahead. Let's check your afternoon drive, get you around the hot spot safe and sound on News Talk, 820 WBAP.
And these Democrats, I don't understand like this Joe Kennedy. I mean, he's a trust fund baby. He's all he is. I mean, I'm a redhead. It's kind of insulting. I'm a redhead, and I'm a Catholic, and I'm a Republican. And, this guy's he's a jerk, man. I mean, all they'll have to do if he ever runs is just bring up Chappaquiddick with great Uncle Teddy, and it'll kill him. For sure.
Yeah,
he'll be out.
Because your name is a Kennedy does not necessarily mean that your birthright is a place or a seat in Washington. I've never understood that, but, I'm not from Massachusetts either. So,
exactly. Well, the thing is, again, it just boils down to this. I think you hit it on the head. These people just really don't, if things are going great in the White House, if it's a Republican, especially a white male, I guess, Nancy Pelosi hates it, but they want people to they want everything to be their way or the highway. And I didn't realize the other day that I didn't even realize this. The lady just resigned Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards. I did not know that was Ann Richards' daughter. It all makes sense now.
Well, it's all tied. Yeah, you bet. He's right. I mean, this is not even about Republicans versus Democrats or liberals versus conservatives. This is about, can we keep our country, please? Is it possible to do that? The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, they complained that Trump promoted, get this now. Are you sitting down? Okay. He promoted an exclusionary version of America in his State of the Union speech because he wants to enforce immigration law and secure the border. So he was being exclusionary. As a matter of fact, here's a quote from the political director of the ACLU. Tonight, President Trump said the word America more than 80 times in his speech. That's Fayez Shakir, that's the group's national political director. Yet after a divisive first year, we hear and feel how exclusionary that America is, with policies that have harmed so many vulnerable American communities. And then, of course, he had to do a pitch for the company. The ACLU stands ready to protect these communities, both in the courts and the polls. I don't get that. I don't understand. How can you say America too much? It's a State of the Union by an American president in America's capital, and he said it 80 times during, how long was that speech? An hour and a half? Or thereabouts? Hour and 28 minutes. Well, you say America 80 times. We ought to be saying America a lot more than we do. You know, it's, I don't get what, since when is it okay to throw down borders and just be the welcome mat for anybody that wants to come here? Paul in Hearst. Paul, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great. I wanted to comment that I thought the speech was common sense. It made sense, and it was positive. And all of those things are excellent. And people who want to say that he's too nationalistic, because being an American is the most inclusive statement I can think of. We accept everybody, and we come from everywhere. But we have to be nationalistic at this time. We believed, perhaps optimistically, that if we went over to the Middle East and we gave people in Kuwait a chance for freedom, they would accept it, and they would love it, and they would fight for it. Well, that didn't work. Some people aren't ready for that. But we need to be that shining beacon on a hill where people see our liberty and change from within, so that these people who want to come here go back and fight their own revolutions, as we did many years ago. And, you know, I'm just a fortunate beneficiary of that. But that's what we have to be. We can't accept everybody here and lose our unique Americanistic value. We got to export it by example. It won't work any other way. But we, by being the shining beacon on the hill, will be seen and attractive if we just stay the course.
Well, to me, I didn't, when I observed last night, you know, the scowling faces, the stone faces, the frowns, Nancy Pelosi doing whatever she was doing with her mouth, when they were talking about the lowest unemployment numbers for black communities and Hispanics and the population as a whole, about companies coming back to America to set up shop again because of the tax reform. All of the thing, nobody was clapping. And it was like, would you be, honest to goodness, and I'm going to say this out loud, I really think that, I'm not talking about you if you're listening to this show as a Democrat, but those elected leaders of yours in D.C., they would be happy beyond description if our economy was in the dumper, if the unemployment numbers went through the roof, if China started calling in all their notes, if more companies blasted overseas. They would be so happy if this country was crumbling. If there was any possible way for that to happen, they would be doing it. Why? Because then they're relevant. See, government wasn't ever about raising you from childhood to adulthood. It was never about telling you where to live, what to eat, where to go to school. It was never about any of those things. It was about running a country where opportunity existed. People were allowed to sacrifice and fail, sacrifice and win, start their own jobs, do whatever. That's what the country was about. It was never intended to be a country dictated to by a political party. As a matter of fact, that was just the opposite idea when they started this country. They were tired of being ruled, and they wanted to see if it was possible to create a country where you could rule yourself. The Democrats don't represent any of that.
20 AM, 99.5 FM, HD2, News Talk 820, WBAP.
Well, I know there's got to be a few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts. Rick Roberts starts right now.
All right, 3:05 the time. Glad you're along the day after, as it were. In the court of public opinion, your voice, your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. I thought it was a good speech. I thought he was direct. He was collected. He was focused. Said all the right things. And Democrats didn't respond at all. You know, I can see if he's talking about immigration and they don't agree, okay, I'm not going to applaud for that. But people being employed, I'm going to applaud. The economy's doing well, I'm going to applaud. You know, African-American unemployment numbers, the lowest in history, I'm going to applaud. If I care about the country first and the party second. But if it's all about the party, damn the country, as long as the party's doing well, then I'm going to do exactly what they did last night. Sit on their hands, scowl and frown at everything. Well, if you care about the country, you should have some expression. Well, I just don't like the guy. Okay, well, set that aside and do your job. You're a state representative. Okay. Let's go to, where am I going? I'm going to LaDonna in Denton. LaDonna, thank you for waiting. How you doing, LaDonna?
I'm fine. Thank you, Rick, for taking my call. You're one of my favorite talk show hosts. I love listening to you.
Thank you.
I just want to say that I thought the speech was right on. I was braced for some of his off-the-wall statements, etc., but he stayed on cue. He was great. The Democrats, I hope that enough people pay attention, because these people do not represent you, me, America, or anybody else. They're only there for themselves. They don't care about America. It was so obvious. And I just hope that enough people pay attention and know where they really are. And as far as Joe Kennedy, that kid, I was shocked to find out how old he was. I thought he was an 18-year-old with kind of ear snotty-nosed kid that needs to go home to mama.
No, he's older than that. But he's towing the Kennedy party line, isn't he? Yeah. Where was that one part when he was talking in Spanish? Well, I guess I wasn't supposed to understand that because I don't speak Spanish. Well, Rick, that's because you're one of those exclusionary Americans. Well, guilty. That's the way it is, I guess.
Out there watching tonight, let me be absolutely clear. Ustedes son parte de nuestra historia. Vamos a luchar por ustedes y no nos vamos a alejar. You are part of our story.
Okay.
We will fight for you, and we will not walk away.
I'm a part of your story I don't understand, evidently, because I don't speak Spanish. Richard in Cedar Creek. Richard, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Richard?
I'm doing well, thank you.
What's going on?
I wanted to talk to you. I heard in the speech last night, I watched it. It was a great speech. He mentioned something about people who went to prison and whatnot and served their time. Mm-hmm. And when they're getting out, they need help and stuff like that. So he spoke to me basically because, I've been a felon. I've been 9 years out of prison, and it's been a struggle for me just trying to get a job at a normal pace, you know what I mean, or normal wage and whatnot. So, him just mentioning that spoke to me directly. And by all means, if I'm allowed to vote, and I will continue to vote if I am going to vote for that man nonstop because, he's looking out for the American. I've made a mistake in my past, and now I'm an older man, and I'm working hard to become a citizen again. So, therefore, to exclude me because of my past is kind of it's degrading for me. I'm a very proud American, and I'm a very proud Texan on top of that. And I really appreciated hearing something of that nature when he gave his State of the Union.
Well, what he was talking about during the State of the Union, he said that, I'm speaking in third person, obviously, we will embark on reforming our prisons to help former inmates who have served their time get a second chance. It was following what he promised during the inauguration. I don't know if you remember that we will get our people off welfare and back to work. People coming out of incarceration face two distinct paths. They can either find a job or they will fall into government dependency. Beyond being the main predator of whether someone is living in poverty, not having a job, is the clearest indicator of how likely someone is to reoffend. So this wasn't just, some off-the-cuff remark. He's repeatedly talked about, bringing people out of prison back into the mainstream.
Well, it is very hard to get into the mainstream because we're looked down upon, you know what I mean? And then a lot of people, they do fall prey to, getting into the welfare system because it's easier than trying to find a job.
Well, I think this is something very important to him, or he wouldn't have brought it up during his inauguration, and he certainly wouldn't have brought it up, in the first State of the Union. As a matter of fact, if you do a little digging, you can find out exactly what he thinks. He made the statement 1 year after their release from incarceration, between 60 and 75% of ex-offenders remain unemployed. And rather than promoting rehabilitation and independence, states across the country severely limit the work prospects of ex-offenders through occupational licensing laws. So that's something that, he's big on. All right. I appreciate the call very, very much. Let's go to Steve in Lucas. Steve, what did you think of the State of the Union last night?
Well, it was a wonderful speech. It was well modulated. I think he did a good job. And my wife and I, we lurched between utter disdain at the Democratic side to out loud laughter because the looks on the faces of some of them, my goodness gracious, I am not saying Chuck Schumer's the devil. I'm not saying that. But, man, if he doesn't look devilish at times. He just looks like he's plotting and planning anything.
He always looks like the wheels are turning in some negative fashion.
Oh yeah, and so does Nancy. And there was so much for the Democrats. I like an all hands on deck attitude. I have a small business and it's got to be all hands on deck to get things done. Everybody pulling on the rope the same direction. And a company I worked before taught me that way. And my goodness gracious, there is no all hands on deck with the Democrats. And going forward, the only thing they have to run on, when I listen to him talk policy after policy, success after success, I don't think they have anything to run on except calling the Republicans racist, misogynist, homophobes. They've got to appeal to the emotions because he's taken all the good policies away, and he's actually doing good for America. What do you think of this, Rick?
No, I think you're right. I know it's redundant, but I study the Founding Fathers and what those guys went through to get this whole experiment started called America. And they didn't envision that those people in the nation's capital, as a matter of fact, Thomas Jefferson didn't want them in the nation's capital. He wanted them in the respective states where they were elected, so they'd be further away from special interest groups and under, as he termed it, the watchful eye of the voters. Democrats are not reflecting the way the government was set up. They're supposed to work, both sides are supposed to work collectively, so at the end of the day, you and I are served, not their party.
I'm really curious, following up on that, as to what you'll say about the following. Trump did go way farther than I initially expected, and based on what I've been reading, on amnesty, on the people he was willing to give a pathway to citizenship for. And, of course, then he was roundly called a racist for no reason whatsoever. But going forward, as they try to get a deal together in Congress to actually maybe pie in the sky, actually reform the immigration system, what do you think is going to be the reaction of Trump's conservative supporters about what his proposal is? And what do you handicap a chance of him actually getting immigration reform done?
Okay, good question. I hope, it's my sincere hope, that the most conservative among his base will realize this is not a monarchy. One person doesn't call all the shots. And certainly the president doesn't either. Collectively, something has to be agreed upon. There has to be compromise, or nothing gets done. We're at gridlock, and you and I suffer. They don't. We do. I think if it's a 12-year process through work, the military, a merit system, and you're going to know in 12 years whether somebody's going to go off the deep end or not. I think that's worth looking at. I think, giving blanket amnesty never has worked in this country. We've tried it a couple of times. So I think this is a decent compromise.
If I had to guess, I would guess that the Democrats will oppose it with everything they're worth because they don't want to give the Republicans an immigration victory for midterms. No matter how it benefits their supposed constituency.
You're right.
You think they'll? Yeah,
you're right. Democrats aren't going to agree to anything. They wouldn't agree to giving blanket citizenship to everybody in this country illegally if you did it tomorrow. They would find some reason to get their back up against it. And the reason for that is the same reason that Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton have to keep the races at each other's throat. If we got up tomorrow morning and there was no racism, they would be irrelevant. Same thing for the Democrats. They painted themselves in a corner. Now, a compromise that benefits, as you accurately point out, their constituents, they can't even agree to that because then, it's no longer on them. They can't use that to get the votes. It's a Republican victory. So I'm not looking for the Democrats to do anything.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you taking my call. Keep up the good work.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate it. 3:17 the time. Let's take a check of that afternoon drive. You're out and about. We want to make sure you get there safe and sound.
Want a president who is compulsively dishonest, who is a bully, who actively represents the interests of the billionaire class, who is anti-science, and who is trying to divide us up.
No, Bernie. The Americans want a doddering old socialist bumping into trees as he walks home. Americans want a communist country, Bernie. There you go. I tell you what, when we get, a majority in America that want to be a socialist nation like Venezuela, we'll give you a call. All right? We'll promise. Let's go to Marty. Marty, what did you think of the State of the Union last night?
Well, I was pleasantly surprised. As a matter of fact, right after the speech, I couldn't help but think back to my childhood when anytime the president was on television, of course, you only had 3 channels back in the day, and it was like, oh my gosh, the president's going to talk again. And, I was kind of hoping somewhere between his inaugural address and the address to the United Nations, and I was totally blown out of the water by his speech, not only in form and content, but his delivery. And the thing that really struck me the most, and I have never, I don't think in any of the State of the Unions that I've watched in the past, ever been moved emotionally when the young man from North Korea
wasn't that a
stood
story?
up with his cane. With his crutches. That was incredible.
And the Democrats didn't even respond to that. They only did 2 quick cutaways, and I was looking for it. I mean, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, apolitical, doesn't matter. That was something that transcended political affiliation, and they didn't even respond to that. That guy spent 2 years on crutches to gain freedom. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was very powerful, and the victims, the family members of the victims of the MS-13 gangs, that was also one that it brought me literally to the brink of getting misty. I mean, it really was powerful. But the overwhelming thing that I came across with was all of the things I heard were really good. And I'm envisioning now that the president has painted the Democrats into such a corner that they'll never be able to get out of with the immigration status. They cannot go along with what the president has said. They cannot politically do that without looking like they caved again, like they did with the shutdown.
Yeah.
And he is playing them like a cheap guitar with no strings. And I honestly think that he would have no problem at all letting the DACA program expire in March and say, look, we gave it to you and you didn't want it. And it's going to just play havoc with the base. And I was reading a report this morning that the DNC is just about totally broke, and they're getting absolutely no support from their base financially. Even Hollywood is kind of thumbing their nose at them and saying, look, we don't even want a part of this either. But it was just an incredible speech, and I even DVR'd it. It's like,
I'm not sure.
Incredible stuff.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm not sure if which side won or lost the most. I'm not sure whether Republicans gained the most or Democrats lost the most. Gutierrez, jumping up out of his seat and running out of the speech when they started shouting or chanting USA, USA, stone-faced scowling, sitting on their hands when it came to the economy's doing well. The black community is, their unemployment numbers are lower than in history. Same with Hispanic. There were those examples that were pointed out, the parents of that young man that was held in North Korea, and they sent him back nearly brain dead, and he passed away several days later. They were there, the family members of victims of MS-13. Those were examples of how strong America can be. Yet Democrats didn't flinch. No one blinked. It was like if they were to applaud for something, somehow, some way, they'd be betraying their party. Well, listen, I've got more to say, and I know you do too. 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. It was amazing to me. Even let me just say one thing before we go to break, Randy. The Congressional Black Caucus remained seated, sitting on their hands, frowning. Everybody around them was giving a standing ovation and clapping. Why? Because of the historically low level of African American unemployment. Congressional Black Caucus didn't even respond to that. What would they have responded to? Stone-faced, unmoved, except for one. There was one guy, Representative Al Lawson. He's a Democrat from Florida. He clapped. Everybody else didn't move a hair. Trump said in something I'm very proud of, African American unemployment stands at the lowest rate ever recorded. Well, my question is, why, except for the obvious, why did they react that way? It's because the Congressional Black Caucus does not give Trump credit for the low unemployment rate, as it made very, very clear with a tweet after the speech. It read, the black unemployment rate fell from 16.5 to 7.8% from January 2011 to January 2017. That's not quite accurate, but now it's 6.8%. So thank President Barack Obama. I wanted to dig past that a little bit. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, there's a piece of work, Democrat from Texas, explained to, who is she talking to? I don't recall, but she was doing an interview why the Congressional Black Caucus didn't applaud. And she said, I probably followed, now all of you that vote for Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, if you'll turn your rap music down for just a second. No, hang on, it's not a slur. She said, I probably followed the mode somewhat of Jay-Z. I frankly believe there's black unemployment and black unemployment among young African Americans. So she's splitting it up now. They need more praise about unemployment. They need lots of things. They need job training. They need education, starting from primary and secondary schools, neighborhoods they live in. The schools are not what they should be. They need support for their families. So I thought it was disingenuous to applaud. And it was placating and insulting, to be very honest with you. Where's the compassion and the passion for comprehensive issues dealing with our community? Gun violence, the need for housing. Well, Representative Sheila Jackson Lee, let me help you out with that. Democrats have been promising the black communities forever. They're going to fix the streets, rebuild the schools, replace the street lights, more code enforcement so you don't have crack houses on every corner. They've been promised that for 50 years. Where'd all the money from my brother's keeper go? Didn't go into the inner cities. They didn't want welfare. They wanted a job. So 50 years later, Sheila Jackson Lee, all the stuff the Democrats, your party, has been promising the black community, they still haven't come up with. So before you start saying we need this, this, and this, I want to know where all the money went that was supposed to go to the inner city, the black communities. Businesses aren't going to go down when they get graffitied every night and broke into. They're not going to do that. You know, Barack Obama, I'm going to give you a minimum wage raise. Well, for what? There's no jobs there. So Sheila Jackson Lee, if I were you, I'd read a transcript of your own interview and go, oh, yeah, that's right. We didn't do anything for the last half century. Okay, let's go to your calls. Let's go to Sue in Fort Worth. Sue, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Sue?
I'm great. I have to make it short because I'm at work.
Okay.
But, you know, all the stuff that I saw last night, all the I'm trying to do 10 things at once. The Democrats and everything everybody has said about the Democrats, there's one thing that I took out of that watching them. I'm so sorry. Losers.
No, wait a minute. You say you're at work. You're not in the medical profession or something like that.
Oh God, no!
Okay.
I was retired for 3 years, and I just recently went back to work.
Okay.
Best job I've ever had. Best pay, best benefits.
All right. I just want to make sure you weren't in the middle of an EKG or something. No. Okay.
No, I'm driving my little golf cart.
Okay.
But,
good.
Yeah. So no, I saw losers. I mean, and I think they know it down in their soul. They're losers. They're losing. They're losing their base. I mean, what are they going to come up with that's better than what's been offered and done? You know, what they got?
If you're a I'm not even a Republican. I'm an independent.
I'm more of a. I'm kind of a conservative.
But I am a conservative. I'm a conservative independent. But you know, if there was a Democrat in the White House and he had been able or she had been able to do what
exactly.
Trump has done this first year, I wouldn't be griping about it. I'd be going, man, keep going.
No.
So.
No, but I think it has gotten to them mentally. I mean, they look pitiful. They look impotent. They look like petulant children. You know, everything you can come up with. That's the way they look. They look pissed. They look, you know.
They do.
I just can't even tell you. It was just ridiculous. And Nancy needs to go. Seriously.
Well, I think she stayed too long at the party. I'm with you, Sue. I'll let you get back to work. I just wanted to make sure she wasn't, holding the scalpel or something for the surgeon or something like that, but it's okay. Let's go to Steve in, where is Steve calling from? Where are you calling from, Steve?
Haskell.
Oh, good to have you.
I just wanted to know what your feelings was about Joe Kennedy last night when he spoke to the doctors in Spanish. These people have been educated in our public schools, and they've been here since they were children. Why would we speak to them in Spanish instead of English?
Well, let me tell people what you're talking. Yeah, the Democrats, as they do after every State of the Union, if they're not in power, they have a Democratic response. So they had Joe Kennedy III, who was Robert Kennedy's. Is that right? Robert Kennedy. There's so many Kennedys I can't keep track. But Robert Kennedy's son, right? And then they were in a gym or someplace, and he started speaking. The Democrats' response to the State of the Union was fielded by him, and he started. Well, this is what he did. This is what Steve's talking about.
And to all the dreamers out there watching tonight, let me be absolutely clelear. Ustedes son parte de nuestra historia. Vamos a luchar por ustedes.
Steve, I'm sorry. I don't have a clue what he's saying. But that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I found that very pandering.
Well, it's degrading. I'd say it's nearly borderline racist that you would do that. You would demean these people that have been educated. They're not people that just came across the border that can't speak any language but Spanish or English. They can speak English as good as anybody.
You're right, Steve. But I think what he was doing, he was showing that, we're so in this thing for you that, I'll talk to you in your native tongue, even though you're right, Steve. These kids that came over when they were 3, 4, 5 years old, they don't know Spanish. They know English. I found it to be very pandering. It's sort of like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, I love black people. One of my best. I watch that Sanford and Son all the time. I mean, no, that's pandering. Be quiet. Don't, your actions speak louder than your words. But you're right, Steve. I think he missed the mark all the way around. The Democrat response to the State of the Union, I thought, fell flat on its face. I didn't hear anything that would make me stop and think, well, now let me think about that. When it comes to the State of the Union, maybe there is something here that we need to look at. None of it. It was horrible. And I didn't want to start that way. I didn't want to, did you hear those Democrats after the State of the Union? If you did, I watched it because I'm obliged to do that. This is my job. But it was just like, man, those Kennedys just never go away, do they? And when he started speaking Spanish, my eyes glazed over. I don't know how to speak Spanish. I can count in Spanish. All right, I tell you what, let me step aside very, very quickly. Check that afternoon drive to get you around the hot spots because traffic was a bit of a mess earlier. We'll find out how it's doing now. Then we'll come back. Your observations of the State of the Union, a different Donald Trump. Don't you agree? Didn't you see a more in control? Maybe that's not the right term. Maybe I'm more focused, more deliberate, more in touch. Donald Trump. This guy makes connections like nobody's business. He truly does. And while I was hoping that he'd come out there with both barrels blazing, figuratively speaking, I think he did better than that. I truly do. All right, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. Your calls and nothing but your calls in the court of public opinion next. President Trump's first State of the Union speech. And, of course, I don't know how many of you watched Representative Joe Kennedy of Massachusetts. He gave the Democratic response to President Trump's first State of the Union. He claimed that President Trump and the Republican Party is leading American life into a zero-sum game. Within 60 seconds, he brought up the supposed Russian interference in the presidential election, even there's no evidence to even indicate that. A Republican tax bill that he says solely helps wealthy corporate America. So all you that got $1,000 bonuses or an increase in minimum wage, I guess he hadn't heard about you. Department of Justice under the leadership of Jeff Sessions that supposedly is very unfair. The Charlottesville riots, the plight of the transgender community, a government that struggles to keep itself open, Russia knee-deep in our democracy, an all-out war on environmental protection, a Justice Department rolling back civil rights by the day, and there is not one indication that any of that, especially the civil rights, any of that is true. There's no factual basis for any of it. Then he went on, hatred and supremacy proudly marching in our streets, bullets tearing through our classrooms, concerts, and congregations. targeting our safest sacred places, and that nagging, sinking feeling, no matter your political belief. This is not right. This is not who we are. And you're putting that on Republicans? How are you doing that, Joe? With all due respect. Exactly. I know you're in a tough spot. And by just about every single admission, it laid there. Kennedy also promised to tear down the wall that President Trump promises to build. He said, you sat high atop your mom's shoulders and held a sign that read, build a wall, and my generation will tear it down. It was nonsense. It was the ranting and ravings of a petulant child. Let's go to Robert in Fort Worth. Robert, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Robert?
I am terrific. How are you doing, sir?
I'm good.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. I just wanted to say I enjoy your show and thank you for everything you're doing, spreading the truth, and the whole truth.
Thank you. Well, I'll admit it's the truth as I see it, and I go for the facts. The facts are hard to dispute, right?
Absolutely. So, Rick, I'm watching this State of the Union last night, and I'm just disgusted by just the Democratic ideology of how un-American these people are. You can sit there and have your opinion about the president all you want, and I know a lot of people agree with him, and a lot of people don't agree or they dislike him. But when you can't clap for anything positive that this country is moving toward, or anything positive that the president of the United States is trying to accomplish, to me, that is just disrespectful and un-American. I just can't believe what I was seeing last night. Kind of made me pretty angry, to be honest with you.
Well,
and just disgusted.
Truth sometimes will make you angry. And the truth is, if you are in politics to serve the people, your constituents first, obviously, but to serve the country and all that live within our borders, you're going to applaud some things. Some things you're going to stay silent on if you're fighting against it. But you're not going to sit there for an hour and 28 minutes sitting on your hands, scowling that everything that comes out of the guy's mouth. You can't be against everything unless you're against America.
You know what? You just said it perfectly. And I know exactly why the Democrats are doing this. It's I think obviously it's un-American, but they're doing it for one simple fact: sticking it to Donald Trump. They're sticking it to him. They're standing on their hands, on their head, because they just can't believe what Donald Trump has accomplished. It's driving them absolutely crazy. And deep down, Trump is just salivating, and knows what he's accomplishing, and knows that it tees them off to no end. And I'm going to go out on a limb, Rick, and say this. And I'm sure you'll agree. You may not agree, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say, last night the Democrats showed their you-know-what to the American people, and when the 2020 elections happen, they're going to be scratching their head yet again and wondering why Donald Trump was elected to a second term.
No, I think you're right. I think we saw a very clear image of what Democrats view as important. The biggest loser under a Trump presidency was the status quo, and they can't live with that. They just absolutely, They would rather see this country in a recession, no one working, all the notes being called due that we borrowed, under previous. They would rather see this country implode rather than see it succeed under President Trump.
Absolutely. I just can't believe it. I'm shaking my head.
Well, at least now we know, and that's the key. It's hard to fight against something you don't know. We know. Democrats are for themselves first on the Hill, and America second, or maybe third. Not quite sure. Depends on what their agenda is. All right, Randy, sorry about that. I got to step aside very quickly. Eric Bushman standing by in the WBAP newsroom, the very latest breaking news. We're getting some info on that memo, that 4-page FISA memo. Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second, too. Your call straight ahead, 1-800-288-WBAP, 1-800-288-9227. You, my friend, are next.
A few 100 million more like me, just trying to keep it free. Yeah.
Rick Roberts starts right now.
4 minutes after the hour, 4:04 the time. I'm Rick Roberts. You're in the court of public opinion. Your opinion, your attitude on the issues of the day. And, of course, the issue of the day is what occurred last night. President Trump's first State of the Union speech. And maybe just as big a story, the reaction of Democrats in attendance. Of course, the Democratic response by Joe Kennedy III, I mean, that was kind of laughable. He's a kid. I'm not going to, maybe he'll get better. Who knows? But what was going on right there in the audience was unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's like Democrats weren't having any of it. They would rather see this country destroyed. Well, think about it. The government shut down a couple weeks ago, right? Why? Overspending, military budgets, no. Over a bunch of people that are in this country illegally that aren't even supposed to be here, the Democrats were willing to shut the country down. Does that make sense at all? Okay. And it's not a reflection on the illegals here. It's a reflection on the Democrats, what they find important and what they don't. Let's go to Pam in Sherman, Texas. Pam, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Pam?
Hi, Rick. I'm fine. I just had a couple of comments. Like you said, Kennedy, my first thought was, what is he, 12?
It looked like it.
I noticed several people had posted comments on social media about how he looked like he was drooling at points in the conversation, and I'm sure it was something shiny on his face. But anyway, I could not help but think about Pelosi's comment on the news yesterday when she was interviewed, and her hateful response to the newscaster was, yeah, I'll listen to his usual slobbering self. Let Trump be his usual slobbering self.
Right.
And I couldn't help but think when people were making comments about Kennedy, was he drooling or what?
No, actually, they said it was, they chalked it, he had used chapstick.
Yes, that's what it looked like, too.
Before he went on. And
yes.
I heard a couple of talk show hosts, comment on it. And I thought, that doesn't add to the conversation.
Yeah, I know it. But when you think about Pelosi's comment, I usually don't make comments at all like that about people. But I couldn't help but think, no, actually, it was more your, candidate or whatever.
Pelosi, as the camera panned, as they do,
yes.
She didn't. I think she clapped twice, and I don't recall what it was. But she was scowling. She was talking to people around her. It was like, I want to be. She looked like she was having a root canal.
Well, her mouth, the way it was moving, you know what the reason for that is.
Well,
it was hard for her to chew eating that crow.
Well, Nancy Pelosi has got a lot of work to do.
She does.
And she's been there so long, and I have heard that she may have a medical condition. I don't know if it's true or not. That is, happens when you're on long-term medication.
You mean like possession?
Now, wait a minute. I don't normally talk that way to people, Rick. Now, here I'm trying to be nice, and you're telling me she's possessed.
Trying to be nice, yes, but she is just hate-filled. I want your listeners, if you get a chance, this morning I came across a video. It's 40 years old of Donald Trump being interviewed by Rona Barrett.
Wow, that is going back there.
It was unaired, and it was unbelievable. My husband and I both shed tears over it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, David, are you listening? Where'd you find this video?
It was on
YouTube?
Facebook.
Oh, it was
Yes,
on
I believe
Facebook.
Yeah, it might have been YouTube.
Okay, it was a YouTube video of Rona Barrett, which
Yes.
is reaching way back there.
He was 34 years old.
Wow.
And oh my Lord, the things that he said, Rick, you are not going to believe.
Well, Pam, I tell you what I'm going to do before you say something ugly again. I'm kidding you. I'm kidding you. I'm going to put you on hold very quickly so you can give that information to David, and I'll try to find that. I'll try to bring that up. All right, let's go to, where am I going? I'm going to Roy in Dallas. Roy, thank you for waiting. I appreciate it. How you doing, Roy?
Doing great. How about yourself?
Doing well.
Great. Maybe we need to do a popularity poll on the publisher and editor of the Dallas Morning News for night, keying on many of the key points of President Trump's State of the Union speech. For example, there was no mention in regard to that young 12-year-old boy who generated enough attention to get 40,000 American flags placed on veterans' graves.
Yeah.
The child recognized the fact that our veterans in our country have been neglected. And he had that young man stand up in the audience. That is a moment in a lifetime. Yeah. And the other fact in regard to that young man is that it shows that his family instilled the morals and ethics in this country that have been lost in the families of this country.
Oh, I agree with you. What does this have to do with the Dallas Morning News?
They didn't put these things I'm bringing up into the paper today.
Okay.
Okay. Secondly is the Staub family from Ohio that Trump said was a small business owner, and now with the tax cuts, they're going to be able to expand. And he had the welder.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And he gave that man a lot of recognition and praise, especially him being a minority, an African-American man, working his way up into that company. And with the tax cuts, the Staub family is going to be able to employ and hire more employees. Whereas the previous administration, the small business owners were being murdered in this country and not given the opportunity and chance to start and keep their businesses. The tax structure was just overwhelming them totally. And thirdly, with Trump being a New Yorker, he hit it right on point in regard to Long Island, New York, and how de Blasio and Bloomberg and Cuomo, and Schumer and Clinton, how they run the state of New York, and allowing these illegal immigrants and the MS-13s and the Zetas come in and destroy the very fabric of that state and overrun it with killings and enforcement and drugs.
Yeah, he did a good job pointing out how law enforcement had really, stood up and taken it to, MS-13. Maybe you don't hear much about it as much as you should. If you're on the West Coast, you hear about it a lot. And I had a personal situation with MS-13 that I won't go into, but there's nothing to mess around with. I mean, these are the guys that the Crips, Bloods, West Side Mafia, Inca Boys, you name it, they're afraid of. And how do you find out who they are? Well, it's generally pretty easy if you see the tats. But he acknowledged ICE and what they were doing. I mean, he did a good job, did a great job. But that little boy slipped my mind. But that 12-year-old that got that movement started to place all those American flags on veterans' graves. That was a pretty moving moment. But that didn't even move the Democrats. They weren't even moved by that. All right, let's check your afternoon drive very quickly and back to your calls. I'm Rick Roberts, the Court of Public Opinion on News Talk 820 WBAP.
Of our framework generously offers a path to citizenship for 1.8 million illegal immigrants. The second pillar fully secures the border. The third pillar ends the visa lottery, a program that randomly hands out green cards without any regard for skill, merit, or the safety of American people. Fourth and final pillar protects the nuclear family by ending chain migration.
Well, there you go. Can you stand that as a compromise? Because that's what it is. Let's go to Mike and Wiley. Mike, thanks for waiting, Mike.
Hey, Rick. Boomer Sooner, my friend.
Boomer Sooner.
Hey, I worked 7 years in D.C., and the DOD was my customer, so I kind of had to wear a neutral hat. And when you go in and drink coffee with these guys, you go to lunch with them, you go to happy hour with them, Rick, they can't hide their dirty laundry from you long. You start to see it. And I've learned more politics at happy hour after they've had a few drinks than I ever did out of a book. And I can't tell you how many times that there'd be Democratic. Now, these aren't the politicians I went with. These are the aides of the politicians.
Sure.
So I want to be clear, because that's how they network. And if I heard him say it one time, I heard him say it 1,000 times, how they would laugh at owning the minority vote. And they would say, a naive voter is my best friend. And as long as they never understood the difference between solving a problem and solving a symptom, I'll own them. And remember, I only have to own 51% of them, because I can always sell socialism if I disguise it as compassion. And I remember several times, I'd get on the plane to come back to Dallas, and I would meet some of my minority friends, and I would say, man, you ought to hear them. They're laughing at you. They own you. They're laughing. Oh, no, Mike, you just misunderstood. You just misunderstood. No, and I'm going, no, I'm telling you. I sat there and heard it with my own ears. And no, they got our back. And so I didn't just had to drop it. I was fighting on a field that I didn't know how to communicate. So I just let it go. But the more and more they've come along, they've turned to me and said, well, Mike, I guess you are right. I don't know how I'm going to handle this. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that I've sat at the happy hour table and heard them laugh how they've owned the minority vote.
Well, I believe you. I believe you because I've talked to the rank and file, the people working in those inner cities. As a matter of fact, Paul was one of those guys in a video that called me up. I'm going to play that. Do I have time to play that? It's just a couple minutes. I'm going to play that. You want to know why Hillary Clinton didn't get the black vote this time around? You want to know why Democrats are scared to death? Because they went from covert racism to overt racism. The big lie for African American communities has been exposed, and it's been exposed by the people that we were supposed to be helping.
Black folks is in an abusive black leadership relationship.
We have to send a message. This is the time for us to send a message.
We're always talking about what the Republicans ain't done for us or what they will do to hurt us. My life has been hurt by Democrats.
And we got in our mind that we always got to keep voting Democrat.
Look and see in your community, who are the real oppressors in our community? They always talk about black on black crime. And when you hear the word black on black crime, the first thing you think of is a black man robbing you, a black man breaking in your house. And that is a black on black crime. But let's take it one step further. There's a black on black crime down in City Hall. There's a black on black crime down in all the state capitals in America, where black folks are voting against our interests, where black folks are voting and making us, we're getting poor and poor, and other groups are getting richer and richer.
Everywhere you go, there's poverty in black areas.
This lot where I stand at right now, Ida Wells, public housing residents to live at. Most of the people are homeless, living in the street. And it's because of you, Mr. President.
In Detroit, where your leaders at? There's no white folks running Detroit, cutting water on black folks in Detroit. Them black folks running that city. Ain't no white folks doing that. Them black folks going along with that. Everything's happening in our community is black leadership doing this.
Our children know that if the Democrats have not done anything for us as of yet, why should they even go out and vote? What agenda is on the table that's going to change their life?
The only thing they're offering the black community is abortion on demand. This is what the president asking for us to vote for.
Now he wants to have this conversation about minimum wage raise because he knows that this is the way to get a lot of the poor people's attention. But to hell with his minimum wage raise. We don't have any jobs. A minimum wage raise for what?
They're not pushing a black agenda. They're not pushing a family agenda. They're pushing a neoliberal agenda.
Across this city in these major democratic cities, this is what it looks like.
How can the same process happen over and over again and nobody got nothing, can't do nothing about it?
Black leadership is abusing us. The Democratic Party is abusing us.
It's the same way in every black community across the country.
And they force us into a life of welfare. We don't want no welfare. We want opportunities to go to work. We want opportunities to own business. They bailed out all of the major banks and these big investors, but left the people starving.
There are no Tea Parties in your city.
We don't have those people. We have a major democratic machine, and the majority of them, they look like me. These are the people who make sure we get nothing, but then turn around and have us to vote for them again.
They only come around when it's time for elections. When they think they can give you a toy or give you a turkey or something, and then everything is good.
Hundreds of millions of dollars are coming down from the federal government. But the money is going to all these special interest groups. My brother's keeper went to his friends. This whole corrupt democratic system that gobbles up all the dollars and starves the people out. Can you all look around your community and see any change that have come about with these hundreds of billions of dollars that have come through our cities? No, you cannot. What we do see is our elected officials riding around in new cars, and they have new homes.
When our people don't have jobs in our communities, when we don't have any vital resources, when all the deals been cut and all our people are left out, this is where we end up.
And we got the most important thing that we got that we can stop all this. Everybody got to vote. And if you use your vote wisely, you can stop a lot of this stuff.
That means more to me than any congressional report. Those guys made that video when Barack Obama was president, right before the election, and they're right. They're right. The light came on, and they said, "Wait a minute, why do I keep voting for Democrats? My situation hasn't changed at all." That's available. You can pick that on the WBAP website. It's on my page. Just go to WBAP.com, go to the Rick Roberts page, and it's down at the bottom there. Every time I hear those guys, and like I say, unfortunately, Paul, who's one of the three guys in the video, has passed away. And before he passed, they called the station, and we had a chance to interview him. But every time I hear those guys, the first thing I think of is Barack Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee. They are the poster people for exactly what those people were talking about.
That fell mostly on Americans, making less than $50,000 a year, forcing them to pay tremendous penalties simply because they couldn't afford government-ordered health plans. We repealed the core of the disastrous Obamacare. The individual mandate is now gone. Thank you.
All right, 4:33 the time. Going to get to your calls and nothing but your calls in the next couple of segments. You know, Mark Thyssen is a pretty good writer. I don't get a chance to read a lot, but, you know, in the light of what occurred last night, I was going through some archive stuff, and, you know, the government shutdown, it's over. Democrats finally realized that closing the government over illegal immigration, of all things, was a losing political battle. They created a needless crisis, and for their trouble, they got rolled, as Thyssen points out. So who's to blame for the current predicament the Democrats find themselves in? You got Chucky Schumer, you got Nancy Pelosi, you got the rest of the Democrats sitting on their hands at the State of the Union. They can put the blame squarely on the back of the man who could have legalized the Dreamers when he had the chance, Barack Obama. During the 2008 campaign, he promised in a conversation with, it was one of the Spanish stations. It was Jorge Ramos. Remember him? I had Ann Coulter on immediately after that. She and this guy really got into it. But Barack was there, Passing immigration reform, he said, was going to be one of his first legislative priorities, and he even set a timetable. Do you remember this? I can't guarantee that it's going to be in the first 100 days. I will guarantee that we'll have it in the first year. I strongly support and I'm promoting immigration reform, and I want to move forward as quickly as possible. Well, if he'd wanted to, he could have. You know, partly controlling the House, and Democrats had a 60-vote filibuster-proof Senate majority. If Obama really wanted to pass the DREAM Act or some type of comprehensive immigration reform, Republicans would have been powerless at that point to stop him. But he didn't do it. You know, fast forward to 2012, that interview, Ramos called Obama on it. He called him out on it. At the beginning of your governing, you had both control of both chambers of Congress, and yet you did not introduce immigration reform. I want for you to acknowledge that you did not keep your promise. What did Obama do? What he always did. He objected that he had made that promise before the economy was on the verge of collapse. And so his first priority was making sure that we prevented going into a Great Depression. And Ramos, to his credit, wasn't having anything to do with that. It was a promise, Mr. President, and a promise is a promise. With all due respect, you didn't keep that promise. Well, Obama came up with an excuse, as he always did. If you notice that about Obama, he always deflected onto someone else or something else. In the midst of dealing with the economic crisis, I championed Obamacare and got other legislation passed. If passing immigration reform had been a real priority, he could have done it. And if he had, there'd be no immigration impasse today. So, I mean, if you get a chance to read that, it's a good read. But you want to know why Trump is dealing with us right now? Because Obama didn't. Angelo in Arlington. Angelo, thank you for waiting. How you doing, Angelo?
Hi, Rick. I'm very happy and very proud that my vote actually counted for something productive this time. This is what I witnessed last night. This is what I want to share with everybody. We the people, not the Democrats, not the Republicans, not the non-Trumpers, we the patriotic American people elected a non-politician who said he would work for us. He would work for us, put the people first, and that's exactly what he has done. And what I witnessed last night and what disgusted me, I don't even want to use I think it's sad, number one, is that I witnessed Democrats who sat on their hands, angry as hell, reminding me that they live in darkness like the devil does, and the Republicans who love this country, the never Trumpers, forget them. But the ones that love this country, they're sincere Christians like myself and are grateful to Almighty God for the freedom we have here. And it very insulted me as a Vietnam veteran that they couldn't even stand up and acknowledge, whether they wanted to smile or not, acknowledge the veterans. And the most insulting thing was when Trump touched on, it's not about government, and pointed up and said it's about we trust in God. That told me these are all phony Christians, the Nancy Pelosi's, the John Kerry's, the Joe Bidens, the ones who say they are Catholic. They should be ashamed of themselves. We have a man who is working for us, and they can't accept that, and their minds are blown because, like I said, when you follow the devil, how can you be so miserable? Every time I look at these people, they're the most miserable-looking people on this earth because you know what? And this is what I did a tweet this morning. You reminded me of my father lecturing me when I was a child, with a puss on my face and crying out, "Mommy, where's my pacifier?"
Yeah. Well, look, the Democrats are working, the Democrats in D.C. are working for the party first. They're working for you and me somewhere down the list. They're struggling to become relevant once again. Right now, Democrats are irrelevant. You know, it's obvious, they're willing to shut down the government on behalf of people that don't even belong here. They're willing to shut the government down based on illegal aliens. I mean, that still boggles my mind, even for Democrats. They are willing for this country to go into a recession, to go into an economic collapse, just so they can be relevant once again. You know, if that Democratic response by Joe Kennedy III told you anything, it told you they're struggling to be relevant. They're willing to sell out the country to become relevant politically. And they're not. So how about this, Democrats? You're not relevant. You know you're not. You have nothing to cling to. So why don't you go back to square one, like the founding fathers envisioned it? Start working together. Start working in bipartisan fashion to reduce the debt, to make unemployment even better. Do what you need to do to work with the other side so that at the end of the day, who is served? The people are served. Go back to doing what you said you were going to do. Represent the people, not yourselves. And that would take care of everything. Good call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Mike in Chicago. Mike, thanks for waiting. How you doing, Mike?
Call. I can't believe I got through, but I'm calling from the People's Republic of Chicago.
Good to have you.
Thank you very much. One of the things that really struck me while watching the speech last night was the optics of the entire speech. I'm thrilled that the Democrats reacted like they did throughout the entire speech. And especially as the camera panned across, what we saw was Nancy chewing her cud. You have Bernie Sanders looking senile. A lot of people texting during the speech. You can see, when there was back shots. And then my favorite senator of all time, Dick Durbin, looking like a serious backbencher. I'm from the generation, I'm old enough to remember when optics really did matter, when Nixon and Kennedy debated. And Nixon won, if you listen to it, I'm on the radio, but Kennedy won because he appeared poised and young and confident. Well, that's what I saw from the Republican side, was youth and energy and a lot more excitement. And personally, I'm thrilled with the Democrats' response. They're going to have a lot of troubles moving forward.
I think you're right. The best thing I can say, and certainly the most truthful thing I can say about the optics last night, is Democrats were being honest. They were being as honest as they could about who they are, and what they represent. They didn't applaud for the economy. They didn't applaud for jobs. They didn't applaud for the military. They didn't applaud for anything.
They really put on a show last night, and it was literally a circus on their side. I'm thrilled with what they did.
Well, you're from Chicago. You're supposed to be thrilled.
Well, yeah, my vote doesn't count so much up in Illinois, unfortunately. But I lived for a while in Texas, got turned on to BAP, and I'll catch you when I can when I have the access to the internet. So thank you very much.
Hey, Mike, your calls are always welcome. We appreciate the call. And he's right. He's absolutely right. What the Democrats did, it transcends shameful and disrespectful and all those things I'm being told today. It just basically showed you who they were. We don't care about the economy. We don't care about jobs. We don't care about the military. We don't care about those that have suffered devastating losses in their family because people made it into this country that shouldn't have been here. We don't care about anything other than like me. I want you to like me. Don't like him, like me. I'm the person that's going to help you. How? Because I say so. What have I done? Nothing. But like me. Don't like him, like me. Petulant 5-year-olds in a school playground. That's what I saw last night. And it was absolutely, what's the word? Shameful.
For them, dignity isn't something you're born with, but something you measure by your net worth, your celebrity, your headlines, your crowd size. Not to mention the gender of your spouse, the country of your birth, the color of your skin, the God of your prayers.
Okay. All right, Joe. That's Joe Kennedy III. And now let's all go to Chuck E. Cheese. All right. Sorry, that was necessary, was it? Here's what Trump's critics and the Democrats still don't get about why he was elected and has the support still of millions. President Trump shows concern for blue-collar Americans. Most Americans don't have college degrees and big paychecks. They worry about factories and businesses leaving the U.S. to take advantage of cheap labor abroad. Trump, he resonates with those people. He understands. Millions of Americans don't see President Trump's concern over immigration as racist. They recognize the Obama administration squandered one of America's best opportunities to what? Start growth, raise wages, pay for the retiring baby boomers, defend America. They see President Trump as not just talking about it, but working toward that end. Democratic economic policies have always been, historically, very, very pricey. Despite a deep recession greeting him when he took office, President Obama's economic policy yielded the slowest economic recovery since World War II. Not so with Donald Trump. President Trump has the courage of his convictions. Well, I don't even need to comment on that. He doesn't bow to political correctness. He could care less. Conventional wisdom. He stands up for America. He supported GOP Senate candidate Roy Moore in Alabama to strengthen Republican control of the Senate. Despite all the criticism, I mean, he stands firm in that vision to make America great again. Trump is working to project strength around the globe. He's rebuilding our military. He broke the back of ISIS, drove it out of its strongholds by hitting the terrorists harder than President Obama ever did. Recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, something that every president said they would do but never did. Threatened to renegotiate the Iran nuclear deal. Stood up to North Korea's dictator, Kim Jong-un. He speaks directly and clearly to the American people through his use of Twitter and his colorful comments to the media. He commands public attention like no other president we've ever had, good or bad. He fills TV newscasts and stories on the web, radio and print. Supporters and opponents talk about him every single day. Perhaps the president should pick his fights and choose his words more carefully, but he has shown that the notion that a president shouldn't speak directly and succinctly and frequently to the world is ridiculous. Still, there are quite a few uncertainties that lie ahead for President Trump. What's going to happen to the special counsel? And, when are they going to stop with the Russian investigation they found no evidence on? Will Democrats capture or control one or both houses of Congress in the November elections, use their control to block his legislative initiatives, maybe even move against him with impeachment? With unemployment down to, 4.1% in December, wages are starting to go up. Taxes are starting to go down. The gross domestic product growing faster than it has in the last 8 years. And the stock market reaching highs it's never recorded before. One might expect Trump to be more popular outside his base, but he's not. After the State of the Union, his popularity went up 10 points. I think he's at 42% now. Traditionally, a president who aggressively divides America, as Trump has, he's done that, doesn't fare well with the American people in opinion polls, and he doesn't. And when he seeks re-election as he begins his second year in office, he should remember that. Identity politics divides America. That won him the votes in 2016. If he wants to broaden his base, he'll also need to reach out and show he respects other points of view and maybe help heal those wounds a little bit. Of course, wages going up, taxes going down, that goes a long way in pulling the lever for someone. That's going to do it for me. God's blessings to each and every one of you, whether you agree with me or not. That's always my priority. I'll be back with you tomorrow at 2, your afternoon drive. Rick Roberts, 2 to 5 on News Talk 820 WBAP.